we're live here, and anyone that's just waking up is waking up to news that Pfizer announced that their vaccine's 90% effective. And, I'm on the East Coast time, so I'm naturally up a little bit earlier than you guys. And obviously the futures.
I was up for it.
All right. Well, the future, what I was going to say is the futures were already ramping up last night. I think the market is clearly liking the idea of the way this election played out. So before this news even got announced, the market was already ramping up, and tech was actually really the one that was leading the way. And then as soon as this vaccine news got announced, the Dow went up huge, and then naturally these technology stay-at-home stocks started to sell off. And then there's other technology non-stay-at-home stocks that are naturally also getting caught up in the sell-off. And this is going to definitely be a really interesting day because this morning you could see the shift. Obviously, names that we always talk about on here up huge this morning. Spirit Airlines up 21%, Carnival Cruise Line up 30%, AMC Movie Theater up over 80% now, Live Nation Booking. You name any name that's a recovery, life back to normal name, and it is absolutely up huge. Planet Fitness, Dave & Buster's, but then you look at these stay-at-home names or technology names in general, and some of them are getting crushed. So Zoom down 15%, which makes a lot of sense. Peloton down 12%. Some of these are a little off their lows, but they're selling off hard. Netflix down 5.5%. Everybody is obviously trying to just get ahead of the narrative here and reposition themselves. People are clearly probably caught once again wrongly positioned, long tech, short these other names, kind of forgetting about the whole narrative of the virus, the vaccine. And I don't think this is surprising. We knew that there was some positive vaccine news that was about to surface. Which company and how soon it was going to happen, who knows? But that's the story today. The market looks like it's going to be up huge. Tech looks like it's going to sell off. And like I was telling Dad this morning, I was up way more in my personal portfolio at 6:30 than I was once this got announced because I own a lot of big tech names that are selling off with this. Twilio, Pinterest, Snapchat, Shopify, Fastly, Amazon. I mean, all the names that benefit from this pandemic, even though some of them are going to continue to benefit in the future, are selling off. And all the names that benefit from a vaccine are obviously going through the moon. Oil and banks are crushing it right now. BP, we got on here. I've never stopped this much in a day. Don't get me wrong. They're well off their highs, over 50% off their highs. But yeah, definitely going to be a really interesting week. And Dad, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, yes, everyone was expecting the vaccine, and everyone figured it was going to come after the election for various reasons. But nobody thought it would be over 90% effective. Everybody was in the 60s to 70, 75.
That's why we're seeing this today.
And that is just huge. I mean, that basically puts it in the category of getting a measles vaccine, where no one has the measles anymore. So the only question out there is, how long will it last? And that they won't know for a long time, but it obviously will last for a while. And if you can get this vaccine, you got to be crazy not to take it, in my view, anyway. And as far as the market goes, this is an example of why diversification works. Doesn't work all the time, but boy, if you had a mixed portfolio today, you're going to benefit because.
Baby. Yeah, I'm very excited today. I was set up perfect.
You're just making 1 year returns in one day.
Great call on Save, Dad. I mean, I loaded up hard on that last week.
Well, Save is an example of just being in those type of names that you could pick any one of them.
Boeing even.
And you would have hit a home run. Boeing, obviously leads the Dow.
Disney up huge, naturally.
Yeah, anything related is going to be huge. The question is, what do you do?
Huge.
The question is, what do you do now that you have these big gains?
Well, especially with this election not even over, the legislation has an emergency meeting in Michigan that literally just came out. So when you look at that Pennsylvania. There's a legit chance this election's not even over. So
I don't even think people care about the
election. They don't care until they know about it. No, most people are so blind of what's even going on with that. But that could shift.
But it shows you how events are bigger than these two guys fighting it out. Joe Biden having his little task force to prevent or to help with the virus is somewhat of a joke, because by the time he takes office, the vaccines will be starting, and it's good that everyone will wear a mask. But
we also predicted this to a T, that right after the election, the COVID counts would disappear and a vaccine would come out.
Well, the COVID counts
on the networks, they've stopped broadcasting them. So that's very interesting to me. But that makes a lot of sense with the bias against Trump.
So, I mean, look, at the end of the day, like, are you, Dad, obviously you're selling off stocks on a day like today. Well, last time.
I was thinking Friday, we got to take some profits after this move. And this just makes it that much more obvious that, you might be missing out on another big move, but you want to sell something to take some cash in and see what develops.
Yeah, well, last time there was
What?
Last time there was like a blow off top like this 2 weeks ago. It was extremely short lived, and that was when the market then corrected by 10%.
Well, I think this is way different with the vaccine being at 90%.
Well, you look at some of these stocks; they've broken out through the whole pandemic to levels right above. So you could make a case that there's more room to run.
I think there is, because this timeline is expedited now, and the notion of getting back to normal is all of a sudden now, people are natural optimists. So this just completely gets that to another level of sentiment.
Yeah. And you also have to remember that these stocks, like, the BPs of the world and the banks, have been so depressed that the money can flow into them for quite some time. I mean, you get this big pop today. Maybe it sells off a little, but it's probably going to continue on the upside, because those stocks aren't, they haven't had a big move. Unlike the techs, which I think you could find a bunch of them today that are down for the wrong reasons because they're caught up in the indexes. And, maybe they're okay to buy, but they've still been tremendous moves. So they're not as exciting to buy as maybe some of the banks or oils at this point.
There's no doubt that some of these stocks are getting way too big of moves, and this isn't going to actually fix their businesses. And there's some excellent opportunities to, possibly fade some of these names that are flying off of just the notion that everything is completely fine in their business model now. And, like Macy's, for example, up 17.5%. Vaccine doesn't save Macy's. Macy's was kind of on the way out before this pandemic even started. So it'll be interesting to see as the day or even week plays out, which stocks kind of get separated from this and people start to realize, like, hey, is this company actually a good company to have my money in?
Right.
That I heard Valerian was talking about the bond activity this morning and how it was kind of projecting that the United States is going to outpace Europe in the recovery in a big way. He seemed bullish on the market for the first time in months this morning, but
the rates, which is the real reason the banks are moving. I mean, the 10-year is around 91 now from 81. That's an unbelievable move percentage-wise for the bonds, the 10-year bond. And the dollar is stable. It's not going down. It was going down off of the Biden victory. I think there's a feeling out there that the stimulus package is going to be a lot less now. It's not needed. They'll probably do it anyway because they always do things after the fact.
Well, they need to do it. I mean, you've got a ton of people that can't even stay afloat. So
tech is
not changing
again. So that's good to say. Tech turned negative about an hour ago. And there's still a ton of names that are under pressure. I'm not really seeing.
Well, they're separating some of them. Like Microsoft got hit hard. I think it was down. It started the day, it was 228, and it got down to 218, and now it's back to 225. So they're starting to separate out the stay at home from the real winners.
Yeah, even Fastly's starting to trend back up. And Yeah, since we've started talking, a lot of these tech names have gone up a lot, so that's good to see. And then there's no shocker that the gambling stops are just rocket ships right now. I mean, I'm only looking at Penn and DraftKings, but I just typed in MGM. They're up the most out of those three, up over 15%. This really gives a lot of hope to Vegas. Vegas needed this.
Also, if you wanted to play options and not sell these stocks, this is the day you're going to get premiums that are really interesting to be able to sell call options.
Absolutely.
Or just take some profits. But, it's hard to, how do you buy up here? People are scrambling to cover shorts. You got to figure that's the first thing going.
Yeah, there must be some people pretty upset with the developments of the last week.
You don't think that kind of took care of itself last week with people covering their shorts?
No way.
There's always more that put them out. There could have been a lot of people putting them out on Thursday and Friday. And now they're scrambling. And then the question is, are there going to be real buyers off of this? And
I will say that the guy that I bring up a lot that I follow, that's like a technical chartist or whatever, he is back to in freak out mode about how ridiculous these ramp ups are, and closed his final NASDAQ. He was long on the NASDAQ and closed his final scale this morning, and now is like, this is just stupid. He was like, this is not healthy, and the market's going to crumble when this kind of all figures itself out.
Well, look, there's nothing wrong with selling a lot of stock and sitting back and just waiting. There's nothing wrong with that if you're really not sure what to make of everything. Especially if you think there's going to be some election issues.
Yeah, that's why I know what I'm doing today.
Yeah, Mike, if you really do believe that to me, if it starts to become more of a story, is the red herring that no one's really talking about at all, except like really behind the scenes. And
except for the top legal minds and courts in the world that are talking about it.
Yeah, but I know. But ultimately, like, I go back to the fact that like the smart money and the big money that goes in and out of stocks, they're not ignoring what's going on with the election. And
no, I don't think it's a bearish scenario. The notion of possibly Trump staying in office legally, like at the end of the day, the Republican Senate most likely is holding. How is that bad news?
Well, I guess the thing that's possibly bearish is if they redo the Georgia votes and it goes the other way with the Senate.
But that's going to also, Dan, be in culmination with the fraud going on in Michigan that went the other way, amongst a bunch of other. There's 5 states right now, a few of which are legit cases that might make this completely shift.
So, Dan, I mean, what are your thoughts? Because like when I was looking back at the way that 2000 kind of went, it was very similar, where Gore was announced.
I don't think it was similar at all. That was within a few hundred votes.
Dad, are you looking at the percentages?
Hold on. Let me just say, I don't mean what happened with the election. I mean with the market going into like euphoric mode after the election's over, and then like a month and a half later is when things got really, really ugly. From like what I was researching, and that could be wrong because I wasn't a market participant in 2000. I was,
with so much going on now compared to what was going on then, I don't think you could really compare post-elections here. It's just so different with the fundamentals, with where rates are. There's just nothing the same other than a little confusion on who's going to end up in the White House. But it was more of a possibility that it could go to Gore than this is a possibility it can go to Trump by far.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I don't think it's close.
Well, until we hear that Pennsylvania and Michigan might flip. So if that happens, that's completely changing the narrative on that.
I just wonder how much that really is even a possibility. Because
look at the news article that just popped on Michigan. The legislation's having an emergency meeting about this. So
who reported that?
Mainstream, like the fake news reported it.
I mean, the Michigan numbers were it wasn't even close.
Dad, it was beyond evidence of fraud in the Senate race. Seriously, the black Senator James even came out and said, this is ridiculous. It's not just Trump. So, this is not, Trump's a sore loser. There might be some stuff here. And maybe not. Maybe it was a fair election. We'll find out very soon. So there's still results left there. Even Dan, like you said, with the Georgia Senate, I think the market's gotten way ahead of itself off just thinking that's done. It's like, oh, the election's over.
Well, the Georgia, the only way that can go is that he gets over 50% again. And then you don't have to worry about January for the Senate. So that can only go in a positive way for the Republicans.
Yeah, I know.
Right. But right now it's a runoff for both of those races. And it's going to be a shit show. Probably $1 billion thrown into that.
Tech is coming back with a vengeance this morning, which is good to see. But I mean, I guess comparative, it's really not. This is unbelievable. The S&P is up 6% pre-market, or the Dow. The S&P is up 4.5% pre-market. The tech's up 1.5%. Everything's ticking higher. VIX is getting crushed, and VIX was getting crushed last week. And you know, if you're a bull, that's kind of, I think, what was
you know what would be cool if all of a sudden Boeing comes out and announces, or not Boeing, the FAA comes out and says their flights are fine. Now you could fly the 737X.
Well, you know that's coming.
Well,
that's another 500 points for the Dow.
I go back to Kramer's comments, which clearly were a couple weeks early, but he thought every Boeing positive headline from here on out was like, I think he said like a 20 to 40 point trade.
That's
like,
when I jump back in.
Yeah. So look, it'll be interesting to see if this marks the beginning of, you know, this next rally that maybe we'll see for years to come, or if this is way ahead of itself. I'm definitely going to be looking to kind of reposition here because.
And you're getting an opportunity. I mean, Google was down after all these announcements, and now it's up. You know,
as it should be. I don't mean reposition, like get out of good tech names and put my money into stay-at-home stocks or the recovery stocks that like aren't that good companies that are getting some euphoric lift this morning because of a vaccine. That once the dust settles and people really think about this, like, would you really rather have your money in a stock like Dave & Buster's over a stock like Microsoft? I don't think so, and I think that like that's where.
You know what's having one of the craziest moves today? Sabre. Remember that thing that was
Aaron texted me because he sold them on Friday, and he was like, dude, I'm so pissed looking at Sabre this morning. It's up 28%. And
that's a tough sell.
It's a tough sell, but at the same time, that stock was just – so, Mike, what are your thoughts on Beyond Meat's earnings today? They're up.
Going to the moon. I'm expecting a huge beat, and I'm thinking we're going to be talking tomorrow morning, and I'm going to be grinning.
Maybe you'll get out of your 200s tomorrow.
I mean, hey, no, I'd like to see a huge pop where I have a great time value on that. Like Dan and I have talked about the long-term options. If you time those right and you see a run up early, that's the best situation ever.
I mean, Mike, if things really launch up today, you might see Beyond Meat up 7% in an hour and a half, and you might have the opportunity to get out of that option before earnings even come.
I mean, I'm back to flat on it now, Dan.
Yeah, so wait till the market opens. You'll be
either way. Beyond Meat, they know their earnings are today. They're going to act a bit differently, treading carefully, I think, heading into this.
I think there's a theme that when people realize a company's earnings are on deck, you get people trying to pile into the name, chasing the earnings.
Sure.
You see it all the time.
But my bread and butter will be if they pop hard today. That's when I'll be making that brunt of that cash. And then I'll sell it tomorrow. But we'll see. I'm expecting great earnings, just like we saw with Zillow.
Look, is back to 45, so you could look at the options again.
Unbelievable, to be honest. I'm so happy that I had sold options against my pen position and covered them Friday when it dropped for like 10 minutes, and now I don't. Thank God, because I would have been way out of that at this point. Look at Penn over 70 now. And it's so tricky in these situations because when I looked at Penn drop down to 59, I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah, no shit, Penn's dropping down to 59. This thing went in a straight line from 38 to 75, and it has no right being up here. And then it gets back up here, and then you start playing these mental games with yourself where it's like, oh, well, is Penn really a stock that's going to like bust through and be like an $150 stock? Or is this just the investor gods giving me another opportunity to reposition when I failed to 2 weeks ago? You know what
stock kept going up is Carrier. Through This thing is 41.5 today from 29.
Yeah, that was a nice one, Dad.
Yeah,
You,
I'm not moving now, but
you had some good picks, and U.S. Steel. I could see that stock doubling from not doubling in price, but like it's up 7%. I could see it being up 15% here in an hour and a half.
yeah, and
CMS back to 40.
the real winner today on those names is GE. As much as we hate that name because of Boeing and the airlines and that end of their business, that stock is up 15% about.
Yep, and then McDonald's is up over $10. They had their earnings, and I believe they had them this morning. And
see, that's an interesting one because in a way, that's a stay-at-home stock. McDonald's, that's one of the winners in the stay-at-home. I almost think that's a sell on their earnings.
Yeah, I told you that in the beginning of the pandemic, they would be a huge winner from that. The way their model was set up.
Facebook will be an interesting one to watch. That keeps kind of bouncing back and forth between red and green. And, Uber's obviously been trending up. This is great news for Uber because their ride-sharing business will eventually get back to normal.
Yeah, that was such an easy buy during that legislation stuff going on with California. It was just so easy.
It's interesting that Visa is up big. I mean, I understand it because they think people are going back to stores. And yet PayPal is down.
PayPal being down definitely makes sense because they were a stock that basically doubled throughout the pandemic. Like they were one of the favorite stocks, them and Square, during this pandemic. Square is also down pre-market.
Yeah, and both are going to be great long-term stocks regardless. So could be good buying opportunities in the next few days if they dip a bit more.
And honestly, it wouldn't shock me if you see a lot of these names that are under pressure this morning turn positive very, very quickly. Like you're going to see people separate out which names deserve to stay down because things are going to go back to normal. And, we could have a whole nother conversation about what those names are versus ones that really are catering to the future, regardless of if there's a pandemic or if there's not. Like when you look at Amazon selling off today, I mean, give me a break. You know what I mean? Like people aren't going to slow down their online shopping.
Well, what it is there's so many people in these barbell portfolios that they set up that they always talk about on CNBC, where you have the stay-at-home stocks and the non-stay-at-home stocks. So if everyone's selling that group, Amazon's in it, and that's where it's down.
And then aren't there like individual, whether it's hedge funds or just big money people that are like, oh yeah, I'm very happy to scoop up a lot of Amazon here. And that's where you might see it turn positive, right?
Yeah, but the trade getting out of it can last for a few days. And the other thing is all of the names, all these speculative companies that are working on vaccines, I haven't looked at them all, but most of them are down today. Like SRNE.
Makes sense.
Anytime a vaccine is going to be announced, those speculative names are just going to get absolutely murdered.
So let me ask you, obviously you're talking about the barbell approach being the approach you want here, which you either have it or you don't. But every time up until this morning, and maybe this time's different, maybe it's not, when these recovery stocks have gotten a lift and tech sold off, it's proven to be a very short-lived thing.
Yeah.
The last few days, and then you rotate right back into tech. And, when you think about the future of our world and where it's going, it's not that technology is the real beneficiary of just the world, with or without a pandemic.
No, I think you're right. But as far as the way traders are going to think for the next few days, that it's an unwinding of all those names. I mean, I still would not be surprised to see Zoom down around 300.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, if there's one stock to me that's like the ultimate stay-at-home stock that it's tough to see a light at the end of the tunnel for how they're meant to have the value they have, it is Zoom. Like that stock, if there's a vaccine and things are back to normal, the amount of Zoom hangouts are going to decline heavily. And like when I look at Peloton, that's a stock that I've always thought's a little ahead of itself, but I don't think that story is going to change because of a vaccine. Like the Peloton story is going to stay alive. But as it is, I think that stock held up really great when the tech stocks were selling off last time. So,
there's going to be, when people feel confident to go outside, when there's enough people vaccinated, maybe it's 9 months from now, maybe it's a year, people are going to go anti-Zoom. The last thing they're going to want to do is be on a Zoom conference.
You're so right.
Well, they're going to want to go to the bars, meet their friends, or have a business meeting in person.
You're so right. People are going to be so pumped to like not have the Zoom thing just to celebrate the idea that they, for the first time, don't need to do Zoom.
When you think about Zoom and all the competition and that possibility down the road, this could be one of those eventual double-digit instead of triple-digit companies.
Yeah, Dad, you've been dead on with the Zoom short ever since this was at like 575.
Yeah, but don't forget, I started talking about shorting it at 150. So I might be right eventually.
MEDF over $1 again.
What stock? The
Mr. Wonderful. Yep.
Nice. I saw that got down into like the mid-set. Yeah, it's up nicely.
Yeah,
marijuana below 80.
Been acting great off of Biden and anything related to drugs.
Yeah, I also saw that Canopy had their earnings today, and they reported a smaller than expected loss and greater than expected volume for its latest quarter. So their shares were up before any of this even got announced. Or actually, it was after this got announced, but their shares are up. And yeah, that continues to be a really interesting sector. NEO is a stock that'll be interesting to watch today. It was down a little pre-market. Now it's basically flat. But, this stock, let's see, JP Morgan just raised the target to 46 from 40. This is such an amazing stock because it's literally more than doubled in about a month and a half. And every day, it's just like every day pre-market, the stock has over 10 million shares traded. It's unbelievable. I don't understand it, but it's almost always a buy until it stops going up. Like buy the dip on NEO every single day.
This is an incredible. JP Morgan is up 10% now. This is quite a day, and they haven't been able to buy back their stock because of the rules put in place. That's the other thing that people are going to start thinking about. When you think about the banks, they had to put so much aside for bad loans, and now a lot of that can end up coming back into their balance sheet in a positive way. Plus, they could do buybacks again eventually. So these banks really, they could be on the start of a big move. And we haven't seen that in a long time.
Yeah, look, the banks are nowhere near where they were pre-pandemic, and most of the other sectors have fought hard to kind of get back. Look at Booking this morning, currently at 2,000, up over 12%. I've never owned it, but Dad, I know that's a stock.
Yeah, I own that thing. I love that company.
Yeah, so that's a good look today. I'm trying to think what a good name to fade could be on a day like today that's just getting way too big of a lift for no reason. And I think Macy's is that name. I don't know. Macy's, maybe AMC. At the end of the day, like I keep going back to, a vaccine doesn't change the trajectory of where the world's already going before this pandemic. It's not like all of a sudden we're not heading into this digital era where everything's going to be digitalized. Like Shopify is a great company to own, and I'm not saying that they're not going to sell off more, but they're not a company that's going to at all be impacted by this. Like online shopping is going to continue to grow with or without a pandemic, with or without a vaccine. It's just, it was already happening. So that's kind of my take on that. I might even add to that name today. Sucks I don't own Live Nation, though, because them and Planet Fitness were such obvious pops as soon as something like this was going to happen. And,
it really didn't matter what the name is if you were in the travel or
you're right.
The fitness, the movie theaters, they all are up pretty close to the same percentages, give or take. Yeah.
I think if I had to pick a tech stock that's probably going to turn green, it's Fastly. Like I don't stock in res. Really, really nice this morning at 6:30, and it's just not a company that at all suffers from things going back to normal. They help with internet speed, and if you think people
Well, there'll be less people on the internet. That's
no, there won't. No, there won't.
That's the thinking.
No, especially when you look at where Fastly is a huge winner is how much people have gotten off Twitter now and have gone over to Parler, and you see like they keep going out because of bandwidth problems for that exact purpose. So you have to think that's huge for Fastly.
There's a lot
of shift now in trust in social media, legitimately off this election.
I just think that, like, if you actually are sitting here thinking that because of a vaccine, people are going to be using the internet less, sure, go ahead, sell all your internet stocks. But I think this is a great time to get ahead of what people are going to be thinking, possibly within minutes of the market opening. And, you know, I know, like, there's just certain names here that are not at all going to suffer from the world going back to normal. If anything, are going to do better. Like, you look at Twilio, and they're a notification app. So they power communication and notification. And I know they no longer work with Uber, but at one point that was their biggest client. And when you think about it, Uber's notifications are about to increase because the ride sharing business is going to go back to normal. So I think that, you know, Twilio and Fastly are both buys. I'm probably saying that because I'm biased.
And yeah, it's 9 o'clock. Everyone make a fortune today. We'll see you tomorrow. Subscribe, Rolland Market Mashup. Boom, baby.
Etsy selling off 10%.
Yeah, there's quite a few.